tuning in from the Eastern or Central or Pacific time zones, we're in the afternoon. You may be joining in from some part of the world. So grateful for you all being a part of this broadcast. And as you join, just like we've done in the other live broadcast, tell us what school you represent. You can do that in the comment sections. And I'd like to give some shout outs to everyone who is joining us along the way. So I found that this has been a great way to be able to interview some school leaders to talk about some admissions and marketing strategies that schools are using, especially now during the pandemic that we're all experiencing and having to adjust. And so it's been a great area to be able to have conversations about important topics that can help you. And that's essentially what this is all about. I want to help you in your enrollment and marketing effort within your schools. And we've got a great lineup of guests today, and I'll be introducing them in a few minutes. But as you're joining in, tell us where you're from. And we would love to just hear a little bit more about our audience today along the way. And as you're joining in, I just want to highlight for you a webinar that I just released this morning. It's an on-demand webinar, and you can access that off my website. The title is Optimizing Your Recruitment and Retention Messaging for a Virtual World. I asked my friend Andy Lynch from North Star Marketing to share his expertise in that webinar. And that's one that you're going to want to check out. Andy does a great job talking about, the messaging that we need to use right now for reaching families in the virtual world. So highly recommend that you tune in to my Enrollment Catalyst website, and you can access my blog posts. And it's a great way to be able to discover more about some of the things that I'm doing to be able to help schools during this time. So see a few of you joining in. Again, just continue to tell us where you're from. So Adam's from Texas. So great to have you here. And Melody's from a military academy. I'm going to mispronounce the first part of that. So from Virginia, and I don't want to butcher a school's name. Noelle from Wilmington Montessori School in Delaware. She's back again. So great to have you back. And Amy from St. Mary's School in Ridgefield, Connecticut. So again, just tell us where you're from, and we'll be able to highlight the schools that you're representing during our live broadcast today. So, and Sean from Christian Heritage in Connecticut. Great to have you, Sean. Thanks for joining in with us on this live broadcast today. And as I just mentioned, there's a webinar that I just released off my website, Optimizing Your Recruitment and Retention Messaging for a Virtual World. Dennis Chapman from the Village School. Great to have you, Dennis. If you missed Monday's live broadcast, you missed a great one. Dennis and Cameron and Nicole from the Village School talked about some of the great things that they're doing. Just one, if you haven't heard about Dennis's Leading from the Lanai program, you need to check out that recording, and it's available on my Facebook page. Laura from the Fulton School in St. Louis, Todd from Tampa Day School. Great to have you, Todd. And Doug from John Paul II Catholic in Greenville, North Carolina. Marnie from Texas is here. Don from Academy of the Sacred Heart. And Susan, always great to have you part of this, Susan, and Linfield Christian in Temecula, California. Melody. And I think I appreciate how you're spelling out the pronunciation of your school, Massanutten. So I hope I pronounced that correctly, even with that instruction there. Romy from Bradford Christian. Great to have you, Romy. Been working with Romy and her team at Bradford Christian for a little while. Krista at Evansville Christian School in Indiana, and Abby at Southside Christian in Greenville, South Carolina, a school that I worked with a few years ago. So great to have you all here. And again, a number of you are joining in along the way. So appreciate your presence. And thanks, Melody, for telling me that I pronounced the name of your school perfectly. So that's always a good thing. I just don't want to mess up someone's name along the way. So I want to introduce for you our guests. And we have three distinguished guests. All of these guests are people that I have known and connected with either online or have worked with them in the past. And I want to start with Mia Major. And Mia is with Finalsite. Say hi, Mia.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So great to be here, for you to be here with all of us. Mia's like this rock star, and you kind of see her everywhere online because I don't know how many webinars she's done in the last 3 or 4 weeks, but it must be like 27,000 or something that you've actually put out there. It probably feels like that to you, right?
It certainly feels that way with doing 2 a day, a couple times a week, all of March, and coming right off of Finalsite U, which is presentation after presentation, and then just diving right into this. It's been amazing, but also kind of crazy.
Very crazy. And you have, I think, the most unique title, Director of Demand Generation. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so Director of Demand Generation is basically, I oversee all of our inbound and content strategies that drive demand for the Finalsite product and the Finalsite experience. So all of that amazing content that we put out there, professional development, workshops. It's basically, I think, just a fancy way to say, driving demand for a product or service. So exactly. I don't, it sounds salesy when I put it that way, but, my job mainly entails just social media and content and, just doing a lot of professional development for our schools and helping them be the best they can be.
Yeah, that's great. It's definitely a unique title. And I was just wondering a little bit about that. And before we went live, you were telling me that you actually live in Columbus, Georgia.
Yes.
So I didn't expect that. I thought maybe you lived in the Northeast where Finalsite headquarters are located. But your husband's in the military, is that right?
Yes, my husband is a captain in the U.S. Army. So we have moved many times over the past few years. We were actually just up in Nashville last October. So I was pretty close to one of our other guests on today's live stream. But we moved down here to Southern Georgia last year. It has been 80 for the past month, so I can't say that I hate it. I can definitely see why everyone ends up in Florida. It has definitely made the whole social distancing and quarantining and isolation slightly more bearable, being able to spend all of that time outside. But hello to my fellow Southerners here on today's live stream.
Exactly. Well, great. You're very close to where I'm located in St. Petersburg, Florida. So great to have you here, Mia. And my second guest is a friend that I've known for many years, Shannon Drosky. Hey, Shannon.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Shannon is the Director of Marketing Communications at Charlotte Country Day School. But we go back to, I don't know, like 15 years ago when you were working at Miami Country Day here in Florida. And I did a project with you all back then. And so that's where we first connected. And then your career journey. So tell us a little bit about your career journey. It took you from Miami Country Day to
Charlotte. Yeah. So now I'm at another Country Day. I was at Miami for 7 years and then went over, actually worked with Dennis Chapman at the Outdoor Academy. And now, I think I'm in my 5th year at Charlotte Country Day School. So kind of found my niche in marketing independent schools and kind of stuck with it and kind of love the community and the network that we kind of all have.
Excellent. How long have you been at Charlotte Country Day now?
This is my 5th year. I'm finishing up my 5th year. So, so I have a team, blessed to have a team where there's 3 of us and we've got a couple contract workers. And I'm also the crisis kind of point person at the school, which is relevant during this time.
Very relevant. Little did you know that you were going to be having to face this issue at this time and really deal with this crisis. So, but I know with all your experience that you've had at fine independent schools, that's prepared you for what you're doing now. So,
great message along the way.
Yes, so glad that you're part of our live interview today. And then our last guest is Teri Rash. Teri is the Director of Marketing Communications at Grace Christian Academy in Knoxville, Tennessee. Hi, Teri.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you here. And I actually worked with Teri and her team a couple years ago. and helping them through my Enrollment Catalyst program. And so, Teri, I think you and I met at maybe it was a FACS RenWeb conference several years ago.
Probably 5 years ago, when I was still in admissions, actually, for Grace Christian Academy.
And you moved from admissions to full-time marketing communications.
Yes, I was in admissions when I was initially hired here 12 years ago. And little known fact at the time was that I was also doing freelance marketing work for a company here in Knoxville. And so over the years, as I attended conferences, I was in the admissions role, absolutely loved that, but also began to delve into the strategies behind school marketing. So about 3 years ago, our head of school at the time, decided that it was appropriate to open a brand new position at Grace for a director of marketing and communications. So I had the opportunity to move over into that role. And thankfully, that was the same year that we worked with you. So I had a good mentor in that process.
Excellent. And both of you, Shannon and Teri, you both use Finalsite for your website platform. And so that, as I envisioned this program today, I wanted to be able to tie in Mia's involvement with Finalsite, and then you two with your experiences with Finalsite. So great that you're all here. Finalsite certainly is a great platform for independent schools with website needs along the way. So, but thank you all for joining in, and we've had a number of other people join in. Just to give a few more shout outs, Lisa from Mission Hills Christian out in California, and Robin from Christian Heritage in Trumbull, Connecticut, and Maylene, grateful for you to be here. Jamie from Washington, D.C. area. Courtney's giving a shout out about FACS. Always a great place to be able to meet friends and connect. And Courtney works with FACS, although she had previously been in the position at a couple schools. And so grateful for all of you joining in. And I know that there'll be others along the way. So just to get us started, I would love to hear from you all. Just how is your school community responding to the pandemic that we're facing? And Mia, I want you to talk about it from a global perspective. Obviously, you're not at one school. You represent millions of schools. So who wants to go first? Mia, you want to give us the global perspective?
Sure, I can go first. So I think, what we've really seen is, I can trace this all the way back to February when we actually had to cancel Finalsite University in Bangkok. And the schools over there were obviously needing to immediately respond and pivot to what seemed at the time to be a crisis that was isolated to a certain country in a certain area of that country. And of course, as we've all seen over the past few months, it become a global pandemic. And we've seen that across the board, schools, depending on where they are responding in different ways. But what we can see across the board, whether you are a large international school in China or a small district in Connecticut or a boarding school in North Carolina, what we're seeing is communities come together in completely new ways that is really inspiring. I think that it is amazing to see schools use the tools that they've always had and use them in ways. It's almost like they always should have been using them, but never had the time to. So we're seeing schools respond to comments on social media. We're seeing schools use live video. We're seeing heads of school get on board and show their personality and all of these ways to humanize their brand and humanize their communications that, for years we've been saying, go live, humanize your head of school, respond to comments. And everyone's like, we're too busy. And now all of a sudden we've seen this shift from all of those things that were at the bottom of the to-do list because they were too busy, skyrocket to the top of the to-do list because it's the most important thing in pivoting and responding to this pandemic. So it's just been really cool to kind of see how schools, and I think a lot of, it's unfortunate that it's in a global pandemic, but I've seen kind of the excitement in communicators and marketers' voices and comments in our Facebook group, like how excited they are to be putting together this like authentic, real human content that it's really, truly inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. What about your communities, Shannon and Teri? just, how are your schools doing with the transition to online learning and being at home and the teachers adjusting?
Well, for Grace, I mean, certainly the first week of realization that we were going to need to move to a distance learning platform, as we were talking about before the broadcast went live, we were really in crisis mode. Things really escalated here as far as the health issues, and mandates coming out at the local, state, and federal level that impacted us right before we went on spring break. So we had about 10 days to make a dramatic shift in our educational program. So most of spring break was spent by the faculty and staff revising and creatively coming up with new platforms, new strategies as far as how to deliver resources and still an excellent educational program to our families. So, for me personally, the first week just felt like responding to crisis and okay, like what's our game plan, and we had to all of a sudden launch this brand new platform that we really, we had never envisioned.
Right.
Probably, fair to say for probably every staff member on the broadcast today, but, certainly not something that we anticipated. But it has been really remarkable, like Mia mentioned. Whereas some weeks, I'm looking for news stories. Through this experience for our school, we have seen alumni jump in to help do virtual chapels each week. So it's a great opportunity, for us to highlight some alumni. In fact, one I just highlighted today on our social media accounts. She wrote a really detailed science lesson that's actually benefiting the local school system. And so she was one of the few educators that was, given that responsibility. So that was a pretty noteworthy accomplishment. But,
yeah,
it's been a great opportunity really to see kind of see our community come alive in a new way. And I have more content now that I'm utilizing probably than ever before.
Yeah, that's so interesting. We'll get into some of those marketing type of conversations, but it's really an opportunity for us. So, Shannon, how are things going at Charlotte Country Day?
Yeah, very similarly. We had spring break the week of March 16th. So when we went back, I just did a board report last week, and it looked like February 2nd was our first kind of communication and our first, our head pulled together kind of our emergency team a couple days before that. So, we're just kind of going through the process of making these decisions, and we started remote learning on closed campus over spring break, March 25th, we started remote learning, and we actually just sent our first survey last week and had a really high response rate. We sent it to middle and upper school students, faculty, and parents, and less than 10% indicated that they were either disappointed or very disappointed. So that was good. The biggest lesson learned, I think we're all facing, is how do we create connection and community? That's our secret sauce as independent schools. And so I think that's been an interesting thing. And now we're kind of going through the process of making decisions on assessments and grading. We're currently committed to remote learning through May 1st, kind of waiting to see the government, see if the decision can be made almost for us. We spent hours and hours trying to figure out when to go to remote learning to, the next, as soon as we made the decision, it was made for us. So we're kind of doing a little bit of a wait and see. So that's kind of where we are now. And I echo everybody's thoughts on, I'm a true believer that marketing is more than just communications. I've been saying this for years, and connection to program and seeing kind of the holistic strategy with the school. And now more than ever, I think it's going to be interesting to be able to explain what marketing is, that experience beyond program, because now our program leaders are really dependent on kind of the expertise and the value of our brains and how we think about marketing relevant to beyond just product. So those kind of conversations have been going on as well.
Very good. So let's dive into marketing a little bit, marketing communications, and just adjusting the little setup here on the screen. And kind of like, I feel like I'm in charge of manipulating where everybody's going to land on the screen. But you think about how are you adjusting your marketing and communication strategies? And then Mia, again, talk from the global perspective of what you see schools doing, the shifts, the pivots that they're taking right now in their marketing and communication strategies.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Shannon hit the nail on the head when she said that, private schools, their bread and butter is this community and their connectedness that you get at, a small school or a Montessori school, an all girls school, all boys, boarding, whatever it may be. And so much of that experience depends on that on-campus experience, that faculty to student ratio, the lunchroom camaraderie, cheering on the sports team, the commencement ceremonies, the open houses, revisit days. All of those in-person experiences are off the table.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they're off the table indefinitely. So we have seen schools take a huge step back because for so long, admissions people in particular said, well, if I could just get them to campus, I can get them to enroll. And I always like to joke, I chose my university without ever stepping foot on campus.
Oh, you did?
I did. So I feel like I'm one of those rare people that was just like, no, I'll just go there. It'll be fine. But now schools are really having to take a step back because they can't say, well, what if I can just get them to campus? So they're really having to take a deeper look at their value proposition. If they've never written one, they need to write one. If they have a really good, strong distance learning program in place, that should be at the forefront of that marketing and communications. We're seeing a lot of people. We're not seeing as, I think, it goes back to what we said at the beginning. We're no longer seeing schools just talk about events they should come to and fundraisers they should give back to. We always encourage schools to follow that 4-1-1 rule of, for every 4 pieces of, educational and entertaining content, you should only be really having one hard and soft sell. And what's been amazing to see is, we're seeing that across the board. It's just piece of content after piece of content because schools need to show that they are a community and that they're not just they're not just surviving, that they're thriving in this situation. That, I feel very strongly that how schools share how they are making it through this unprecedented time is going to positively or negatively impact enrollment and re-enrollment come the fall. So I think, for schools across the board, and I'm sure Shannon and Teri will share more niche examples of this, but, it's really pedal to the metal, full throttle. How can we show what makes our community special in every way, shape, or form? And the creativity is really just inspiring across the board.
Exactly. So Shannon and Teri, it'd be great if you could just speak to what some of the strategies are that you're adjusting or have adjusted in your marketing and communication effort at your schools.
Teri, you want to go?
Sure.
No pressure.
I think, just like Mia alluded to, like most admissions and marketing staff at different schools, we've always taken for granted that we do have a great campus. We have a warm, friendly staff. We have a great family feel on our campus. And so, we've always taken it for granted that, sure, we're going to do what we can to get prospective families here so that they will get a feel for the heart of our school. But obviously with this pandemic, all of a sudden things have had a dramatic shift, and those, options that we've relied on so heavily in the past are no longer on the table. So we've done a lot of video. That's been a huge difference in the way that I've marketed, just in the last couple of weeks. We have students that are doing daily devotional thoughts, for instance, on our social media accounts. So on a daily basis, we probably have 2 to 3 personal videos from either staff or students. So that's definitely been a big shift. Also, identifying all of the different locations where prospective families might be researching about our school. So, adjusting our verbiage in all of those places to reflect the current campus closure, but yet also to emphasize the fact that School is in session. We've got a thriving student body. They're just not here on campus right now, at this point in time, but yet our community is actively growing and engaged with one another. So definitely, the video, updating verbiage, updating our admissions pages and Google My Business page, and goodness, sharing stories of the people in our community. I mean, that's just been huge, to just put such a heavier emphasis on those pieces now.
Yeah. And what about you, Shannon?
Yeah, first when asked this question, I thought about kind of overall how I'm feeling relevant to this pandemic. And although there's so many challenges and it's heartbreaking kind of what's happening, especially with our most vulnerable communities, I can't help the marketing mind of me see it as this opportunity to be remembered in a way that is truly remarkable. And I've been kind of, because of the connection more with leadership, especially during the crisis portion of it, really been trying to influence beyond just doing it for the sake of doing it. But all eyes are on us, and the work that we do is all in a digital platform. So now more than ever, we have kind of this opportunity to own it. It's going to be saved. It's going to be archived, and really focusing in on our mission, who we are, before we do anything, before we make any decision, because there are so many, I feel like we've been saying, there's so many shiny new ideas that are coming, like this one, the live stream, all of these different ideas of how we're going to create community and how we're going to be memorable or viral. Just focusing in on mission and picking a couple and doing them the Country Day way. Like, how are we actually going to be remembered? Because in general, people are going to talk about us. It's going to be positive or negative, not neutral. That's not my saying. I think it's a book that probably Rick gave me years ago. And now more than any time, I feel like the digital world and people sitting there kind of consuming it and also doing that two-way conversation. So that's kind of where we're focused. Right now, the first couple of weeks, it was very much crisis communication. We pushed all of our general goals out of it, and we focused on really two things. And it was building and maintaining trust in the school, and particularly our head of school, as the information source, and by being transparent and as proactive as possible and authentic. And the other goal during that crisis time was to balance fact sharing and hearts. Throughout it, we had a handful of PR situations that kind of came up, and by focusing on those two things, I think helped us kind of get through that. And now that we're transitioning into kind of this new normal Marcom, our three areas of focus, which are a little bit different than our natural time during the spring, where it would be events and some other things, are sharing positive stories about remote learning, creating community, and sharing our educational expertise. So really positioning our faculty as experts in the field. So all decisions and all content is being driven by those three things right now. So that's been a little bit of an adjustment. It's interesting what you said about the amount of content. We are experiencing that as well, because we've accessed all of our lessons and all of the submissions from our students, and it's all amazing, as well as the myriad of ideas that we're getting from these kind of webinars or inboxes or texts. Everybody is an expert right now on all the things that we should be doing or should not be doing. I recently had a senior parent tell me exactly how I need to do Instagram stories to truly honor the seniors, every single one of them, all 140 of them, for the rest of the year. So just gathering all that content. This week, we brought the content team together, because we haven't been doing it because we were temporarily doing this crisis thing, and refocused on our goals. We're using our content planning calendar just like normal, and in order to create a little bit more kind of focus and priority. So that has been a couple things that have been shifting relevant to our strategies.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to hear you all say that there's this abundance of content, because one of the things that I hear school leaders talk about all the time is, I just can't get people to give me content. You know, what's going on? And now all of a sudden, one of the positive outcomes of this is that, you know, we have people more engaged. They understand the opportunity to be able to share, and now you have this abundance of you know, messages and stories that you can share. I want to dive in a little bit deeper, because I think that's good for our audience to try to understand, you know, what are some of those specific online strategies that you're implementing? And again, Mia, from your perspective, what would be your advice for schools in terms of the specific online strategies? I mean, you know, I hear a lot of talk about like virtual open houses, and we talked about that on the other live broadcast. You know, paid search campaigns, maybe even using webinars, whatever it is. I would just love to hear your perspectives on this question. Mia, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think what's important to keep in mind that everything that a school does and every strategy they go to implement really needs to be filtered through like their mission and their resources. Like a school who's on here shouldn't be doing, you know, necessarily what Charlotte Country Day or Grace Christian is doing just because they're inspired by it. It really needs to fit in with their mission, their resources, and what they can do to push ahead. That being said, I think that, you know, if we take a step back, right, like we take a step back and we think about it, I think we need to start considering that a lot of these short-term online strategies are really long-term solutions to enrollment issues, to marketing hurdles, right? So one online strategy, you know, we've been using the term here at Finalsite, digital campus. How can you have a virtual version of your campus online? And that goes beyond just having a virtual tour. You know, how can you showcase the people in your community in a more human way? How can you have successful online fundraising events? We did a webinar with Elgin Academy, and their virtual fundraising event, even though it had less donations, actually yielded $7,000 more than the same fundraising event the previous year. And they actually had a 40% increase in donations because they were able to reach more people.
Yeah.
So when we're starting to think about these online resources or these online strategies, you know, I think, again, Shannon, what you kind of alluded to is like they're originally like we're putting a Band-Aid on it. Like this was temporary. This isn't going to be a long-term global pandemic. Like it's fine. And all of a sudden we're all like a month home, social isolation. Like we're seeing people in mass at the grocery store. And it's like, no, this isn't just here for March or April. You know, I think we're all just waiting, you know, for that call that graduation's canceled, that prom's canceled. And we're trying to figure out a way to break that horrible news. And you know, I think the online strategies that schools need to start considering is how can we showcase our school and maintain enrollment, whether or not someone can come to the campus or not. And that applies to, you know, really community engagement, advancement, learning. You know, so some of those strategies are obviously virtual tours, lots of video, interviews, maintaining, and this question comes up a lot, maintaining those PPC and social media ad campaigns, but slightly tweaking the language, especially now in a time where people can't physically come to campus. You know, some terms that we've seen floating around is, you know, our physical campus is quiet, but our digital campus is thriving. You know, we're closed, but learning continues.
Yeah.
You know, so if you have ads running, you know, for any of the schools on here, like don't freak out. You don't have to cancel your ads. It's just tweaking the language. You know,
I think it's actually a great time to be able to push those ads out because everyone's at home and they're online.
Especially from a distance learning perspective. So our consulting team from the search side of things has seen, unfortunately, an extreme drop in traffic for the search private schools near me. But on a similar spectrum, a total spike in schools with distance learning. So when we're thinking about how we're going to market our school, like there needs to be a landing page on your website that says what your school's distance learning strategies are, because that is going to be a key component of what parents look for down the road. And I think like there's still like, we're all kind of in like this phase of denial. Like I have a July vacation booked and I'm still just like, I'm going on my July vacation. I am going on my July vacation. But I think we all kind of need to like just step outside like our feelings and like look at the facts and say like this this virtual digital campus, like this online version of who we are, is here to stay. Like this new personality is here, and all the things we're doing now, content, social, responding to comments, that is here to stay. So schools need to figure out how that becomes a piece of the strategy and how to take it from just a hodgepodge approach to like a written, formulated thing.
Exactly. No, that's well said. So I'm interested in Shannon and Teri, you guys sharing a little bit about some of the things that you're doing in your online strategies. Like, are you considering a virtual open house, virtual tour? What have you put on your website? Paid search campaigns, any of that?
Shannon, you can go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll do it this time. We actually are fortunate, relevant to this season, prospective parents and admissions, because we closed JK in February. We were kind of over enrolled. We had a really successful year, and 1 through 12, their decisions, invitations went out on the 24th, and they had a week, and we kind of kept on that schedule, but we had the testing and everything done before all this. So that was very fortunate. We did a virtual invite back where we had people, leaders, faculty, and a couple of students kind of say, we can't be there to welcome you and answer all your questions. And they gave us kind of a little blurb about why they should choose Country Day. Put it all on a landing page, and that had really high traffic. Interesting enough, the website had a lot of traffic, but the individual videos didn't. And it was almost like just the fact that we had it was enough. I always say the summary is the most important thing, because even the fact that we're doing it or thinking about it is sometimes more than half the battle. So that was what we did with admission. So we have not had to kind of tackle the open house and everything. But for our current families and really looking at the community, we're seeing this as an opportunity. One of our goals, and we're fortunate that we kind of have some of these systems in place, is to create kind of a culture of content creators, that it's not just the 3 of us in our office. And we see this as an opportunity to really showcase that. So how are we kind of stewarding the people that are tagging us? We have our news page is kind of a mashup page, so you can say. We use a shared tag, and if you go on there anytime, it's constantly different. We've got a handful of faculty, so our P coaches are putting new things every single day. We've got our athletics and our those coaches are doing stuff. So it's all very kind of viral and authentic. We do not control that. I mean, I guess I could delete a post if I wanted to, but really, parents are, we're trying to encourage. We have a very humble community. That was one of the things coming from Miami and Florida. Humble wasn't really something that I was used to in a community. So that was an interesting thing. People didn't want to share. They didn't want to wear their Bucks pride. And so that has been a kind of shift for us. So now we're able to do that through social in a really big way. So we're really trying to create some contests. We did some surveys. We've got a few post your pets, just some funny kind of things on social that kind of live for a day, but I think are more accessible for some people that this is new and different and nervous. So email, we decided early on for email to be our primary communications for any announcements. That way families, they're used to that. It's easy for us to kind of turnkey that. We obviously have our Corona preparedness website and the remote learning website, and all those communications are on there. The parent education blog is something that we are really focusing in on. Again, trying to put our faculty as experts, especially during this time where so many people are kind of home and looking for, how am I supposed to be doing this homeschooling thing? Wellness is a really big part of our school, and I think a lot of independent schools. So the idea of balance, and we've been telling you go tech-free, tech balance for all these years. Now we're saying go online. What does that really mean? So kind of trying to do some interesting ways. We partner with some media outlets in town, and we did a family dinner guide of restaurants in the community, to go kind of and delivery stuff. And it was like brought to you by us. And we included some information. You may be having some more conversations with your kids around dinner. They're around more. Here's some ways to talk about coronavirus, or here's what does resiliency look like, and stuff like that. Video as well. And we've been doing a lot. And the other thing, definitely shout out to Dennis on this one. I mean, I think a lot of people in Berkeley, my sister is a professor and student at Berkeley. So I've been seeing a lot of her stuff, and they've been looking at the higher ed model has been helpful. So we're doing a leadership live series, and we definitely took the leading from the Lanai name. And I didn't take credit. I did say it was a friend of mine's idea, and then my head changed it to Leadership Live. So we're doing a series upcoming, kind of featuring some of that as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Shannon. You're doing a lot of stuff there, and you have a team of 2 other staff members in your marketing communication department, and so that's interesting because we've got Shannon's team, and then Teri, you're your own team, right?
I'm the team. No, I say that in jest. I mean, obviously, I work really closely with the director of admissions, and she and I have been communicating really often and prioritizing what needed to happen first. I told somebody the other day, I feel like I've been trying to take a sip from a fire hydrant because there's been so much to do, and it was like so little time. I'll sit and work all day and finish at 5 or 6 and think I could sit here for 5 more hours. But all that to say, I mentioned we've really increased the use of video. We also very quickly, the director of admissions and I put our heads together last week and decided that although she would be helping to get a professional grade virtual open house filmed, which part of that happened today, but in the meantime, I would go ahead and put together a division-specific virtual open house that we could use in the meantime on social media. So that's been really effective. I used the Animoto platform for that and just used a bunch of still shots that we had from a professional photo shoot earlier in the year. So, I've been looking back at all of the video clips that we've had done in the last couple of years by a professional videographer, and pulling those out of the archives. Certainly, we've been focusing a lot on providing good resources. As Shannon mentioned, I mean, this is definitely a time when we want to prioritize and encourage our community, our current families. And we know, obviously word of mouth recommendations go hand in hand with that. We want our current families to feel very well assured that we're here, we're providing resources, and we're available. So there are daily updates on our distance learning pages by division, as well as video elements that I update frequently. I've begun the Senior Spotlight series, which this is the 4th year that we've done that.
Oh, good.
We had and launched that about a week early, because we could really sense that a lot of our seniors were struggling, and their parents were really struggling, as the days and weeks have gone by, and they're missing, this really critical, valuable, memorable quarter of their senior year. So we're really trying to encourage them through storytelling, community building. I made the joke earlier about, not having anybody formally on my team. But one thing I wanted to suggest to other schools that have worked with you and would be familiar with the Family Ambassador Network phenomenon or program, right when this all began to unfold over spring break, I reached out to a few key members of our Family Ambassador Network and said, in essence, I need to mobilize my troops. I need to prepare my team. And I have to say, just having that core group of parents that are helping me, in identifying great stories that are coming out of this experience, that are sharing what they find online, that other parents may have posted. And honestly, just their help in perpetuating, positive feedback and positive comments about their experience distance learning with their students. They have really been a huge force in driving the whole distance learning format, in a positive direction for us. So I'm incredibly thankful for that group of volunteers. So in addition, Shannon touched on several things that we're doing as well. I don't have a parent education blog per se. This is how Mia and I actually got to know each other, because she helped me set up our blog a few years ago when I first moved into this position. But I thought I'd have time to publish it before this started, but I'm getting ready to publish a blog post that's just kind of highlighting our first 2.5 weeks in the distance learning format, that includes a lot of great comments and reviews that parents have given us through this process. I also did a social media post specifically last week asking for feedback from parents and asking them to help encourage our teachers, just kind of the community building, public relations type approach. And it was amazing. We had dozens of just glowing responses that in turn really encouraged our faculty and staff. Because this is new for everyone. So, and as the days have gone on, I've heard people joke and say, well, the honeymoon phase is over. But like Mia mentioned earlier, parents are paying attention, whether or not they're your current parents, and how well, your school is caring for them and providing the resources that they need to make this work successfully. But what's in the back of my mind constantly through this is that prospective families are also paying attention. And even if they're not currently researching and trying to identify a new school for their child, in a few months, when hopefully all of this, has been alleviated and we're back in a more normal, lifestyle where our campuses are open, that word of mouth about their experience, the current parents, what they are sharing with their families, their friends rather, that's remembered and repeated and shared from to come. And so that's constantly in the back of my mind as I'm making decisions about stories to share, and ways to communicate effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Appreciate you sharing that, Teri. And I'm seeing a post here from Dennis. He needs to copyright Leading from the Lanai. It's a great concept. You should do that, because other schools are going to borrow this example. They may come up with different names. But just want to encourage you, if you have questions that you want to ask our esteemed panel here, you have a great team with lots of expertise. In fact, there's a question that's coming in from Lisa, and Lisa wants to know where you're publishing positive feedback from parents as marketing content. So maybe Mia, you can start with your perspective on where people are publishing this positive feedback.
So I think, just in general, I was taking some notes on some general questions I remember coming in that I wanted to make sure I was able to share that information. One thing to keep in mind is that Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, their algorithms are not taking into account that we're in a global pandemic. So you need to keep your social media presence, especially on your feeds, us on Facebook and Instagram in particular, only posting 1 to 2 times per day on those feeds, and then reserving some of that additional content for your stories or to use later down the line. It's kind of like you're getting all this great stuff. Don't spend it all in one place. Don't use it all at once, because there's going to be a time when, everyone's on summer and we've checked out and you're looking for that content again. You can't rely on those photos from graduation and prom. So when you're getting this positive feedback from parents, there's a couple of things you can do. One, I recommend using a tool like Canva, or maybe you have something built into your website to kind of build a stockpile of this positive feedback and kind of turn it into your consistent content that you're pushing out on social media. So like maybe you have like shout out Saturdays or something like that, where you're posting this content that your family's been saying. So again, like going back to the idea of like a lot of this is short term. How can we turn what we're doing in the short term into a long-term solution? As your parents are saying, we are so happy with how this is going. Remote learning is great. The school's handling it so wonderfully. If someone's reaching out to you individually, say, hey, I really appreciate that testimonial. It would mean a lot to our school if you left that as a positive review on our Facebook page. I know there's a lot of hurdles with niche.com. Like people get a little irritated that they have to like connect it to their Facebook and enter all this demographic information and like their salaries. So, leaving a Google review or a Facebook review can go a long way. And that's a really good way to open up that conversation. I see someone actually mentioned Padlet. We see a lot of our schools using Padlet right now. It's a way for people to like just leave positive notes, and the only issue with it is like it's unmoderated. So I mean, you run the risk if or when graduation ceremonies get canceled, that a bunch of seniors are going to go to your kindness wall and say graduation.
Right. They're not going to be so kind.
And there's nothing you can do about it because it's just up there. But we see a lot of our schools using that tool right now as a way for them to share their content. But I mean, the only downside of it is you can't use it as that two-way conversation to say, hey, thanks so much for the great feedback. Leave us a Facebook review. It would mean a lot because as we all know, people are depending heavily on those online reviews, especially when it comes time to make a decision.
Yeah. And Jennifer's asking the question, how much value should you place on social media ads, Facebook and Instagram? And you could even extend it to paid search ads on search engines like Google. You're doing more, you're doing less, about the same. Thoughts on this?
I mean,
you can all talk at once.
All talk at the same
time. I'll take this one just because it's short. Because we are not in that time, we normally do some branding and summer. I'm constantly running content ads. I have pulled back on some of that for budget reasons and because we don't have that kind of conversion that we need right now, and kind of just hanging on to that strong content to be able to push that out when I need it.
And that makes sense for your situation when you're past your deadlines. You're not trying to do a lot of aggressive online recruitment. Teri or Mia, you want to respond to this one?
Well, we still have a PPC campaign in place that Finalsite is actually helping us manage. So, there have been some tweaks made to that as a result of the pandemic and campus closure. Additionally, we are still using our Facebook ad. We've just modified the verbiage so that it reflects, the availability of admissions staff, but also acknowledges the fact that campus is closed. So in essence, our admissions team is here to help, apply now, this is the right time. So still sending that message, but definitely reflecting the current situation.
Mm-hmm. Anything you want to add, Mia, to that?
No, I think, it all just depends on what your overall goals are. I think, what the content of those ads needs to shift. And I think relying heavily on, if enrollment season is closed and you really just want to stay top of mind for these families during such a pivotal time, like there has never been a better time to invest time and resources into content marketing, developing blog content that positions you as a leader in the market, whether it's the leader in educating boys, the leader in STEM, whatever it may be. I think that, whether you can create checklists or blog content or do video interviews, putting dollars behind that content to stay top of mind when families are home, and just spending more time online doing probably more research than they've ever done in their entire life and spending more screen time than they've ever done in their entire life. The last thing anyone wants to see is necessarily like another ad that says, do this, buy this, doing something that can help them resolve a problem or a pain point is really key. So I would say keep those ad dollars the same and just kind of shift what you're talking about.
Exactly. Our time's almost up, but I want to get, any final advice that you all have, maybe about what a marketing and communication director should be doing now, or anything that you wanted to make sure you shared with today's audience And sorry to cut you off, Teri. I think you were going to say
No,
something.
no, that's okay. I just wanted to mention in response to the earlier question about where to share the reviews, what I've done so far, even sitting at home, late in the evening, if I've seen a really great comment or response from a parent in the last couple of weeks, I've just literally screenshotted it so that I would have it on record. But I'll be sharing those on a blog post. I'll be asking, in fact, I've already begun reaching out to individuals personally that I have a relationship with who have, made a positive comment. In some cases, they're just, like schools would pay hundreds of dollars to, to run across some of the comments and reviews that I've seen. And so I know they're incredibly valuable. So definitely I'll be sharing those on a blog. I'll be sharing those. In fact, I've already started this week. I created a graphic in Canva that I can use just like Mia described, so that I can highlight, kind of the cream of the crop, the very best comments and reviews that I've seen thus far in a series of social media posts over the next few weeks. And then again, reaching out to those individuals, privately on a personal basis and asking them to leave a review on several different sites.
Yeah, that's great. So any parting words of advice that you all want to share with marketing and communication directors?
Yeah, my thought is just take full advantage. I feel, again, with the caveat of sending positive thoughts into the world, this is kind of a crazy time, but I think now more than ever, this focus on the digital presence of our schools is going to change the way marketing communications is seen in the future. So being really mindful about what you want that to look like in the future and making some really kind of big, bold moves right now when there is a little bit of leeway, because we're in this kind of challenging situation. Kind of go for it, take the risk, and, lean on your leaders in your community to kind of go through that with you.
Exactly. Anything from your perspective, Mia?
I really just want to echo Shannon in that aspect of, as you maybe take a moment to breathe, as things start to slow down and you settle into your new normal, take a moment to look back and use data and use anecdotes to determine what has been working in the short term, and make a plan with your team, whether you're a team of 1 or you're a team of 5, to figure out how you can make that a long-term component of your strategy and what the tools are that are going to be needed to do that, so that you can make the budget and the time in order to have this as a long-term strategy to enhance it. If you found something that works really good and you kind of did it ad hoc, what can you do to, really take it to the next level when it's going to be a whole new year? I just hope when it comes the fall that, it's a reason to celebrate everyone coming together once again. And that everyone's digital presence is a manifestation of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Hey, can Mia, Shannon, and Teri, can you drop your email address and your school's website or Finalsite's website in the comment box?
Sure.
And you can do that off the screen or off of Facebook when we finish. I just want to, for our audience, to be able to have access and contact any of you if they have questions. I really appreciate all of you joining in. It's been great to have this conversation about school marketing. These are challenging times, but yet I see great things coming out of schools and school leaders, just like Shannon and Teri, and then the work that Mia is doing to support schools across, the country and around the world has just been incredible. And I have 2 more shows scheduled for next week. So Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I've invited Janice Crampton from the Association of Independent School Admissions Professionals to be with us, and 2 additional members, Steve Salvo from Trinity Episcopal School in New Orleans, and Ryan Abramson from Holy Ghost Prep in Philadelphia. They're both essentially responsible for admissions, and they're also on the board of ASAP, so they're going to be part of this conversation on Monday, And then on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, my good friend, Brendan Schneider is going to be joining me. And we're going to be talking about inbound marketing. So one of the things that we're going to do as we move forward with these live broadcasts is it won't be so much as heavily focused in on the crisis that we're facing, but we'll start addressing other topics and strategies that are important for schools, whether you're in a crisis moment like we're facing or in normal school. Hopefully we get back there as soon as possible. So Mia, Teri, Shannon, thank you all so much. You've been a great team to be able to broadcast. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
Fun.
yeah, we'll see everyone. Yeah, see everyone next week.
Bye.